Hey fellas, I just wanted to make a video explaining my feelings toward ELDERBORN. It's made by Hyperstrange. It's a short game, but somehow I sunk 32 hours into playing it. And since Doom Eternal's coming out next week, I'm worried this game will be forgotten. It's short, but what's here is great and worth playing. Ideally, I would have released this video a few months ago, but you know, I don't make videos. I looked at the reviews that are already out there, and a lot of the reviews are early access, and I don't think they represent the game anymore. And for like 11 quid, you can't go wrong. So if you're short on time and trust a complete stranger, you can take my word for it that it's a good game and you go buy it. There isn't much to the story in ELDERBORN. You can either play as a fella or a lady, going on a journey to absorb people into your brain. There's more to it, but that's all I understood. The cutscenes are well made and get the mood of the story across. I'd mention it's inspired by Robert E. Howard from the Conan books, but that'd be cheating because despite getting that feeling whilst playing it, it's written right there on the store page. Like Dark Messiah, the game's an FPS hack and slash, except it's a bit more visceral. And also the game doesn't crash every other loading screen. So take that and probably a few scoops of Doom 2016 and you pretty much have ELDERBORN. There are some other influences thrown in, but I'll talk about those later. You spend the majority of the time in a rhythm with different weapon speeds. You're encouraged to switch out weapons because each enemy has a weakness to a certain weapon, or you can just whip out the hammer and turn everything into a fine paste. The weapons are great. There are 10 of them in total, but 2 types of the same weapon, so you have like 2 different types of swords, 2 different types of spears, you get the idea. But they each have their own different effects and their own uses. I won't spoil them all, but I'll list off some of my favourites. The early moments with the coffer hammer is great. You mostly get to one-shot enemies with the strong attack and break shields. It's slow, but once you find the rhythm to it, you can dash in and out of enemies, hitting them in sync with your swings. My next favourite is a tie between the bronze Katars and the commander sickles because I like the way they're held. And also they can cut through shields. But also the guitars, mainly because more games need guitars in them. They can both parry, which is essential to mastering if you want to deal with projectile enemies, but I think the sickles are more satisfying to use, so they go to the sickles. Lastly is the Jana's sword, which I don't use much in this recording, but right now I'm doing a level 1 run, and how the damage scales off the essence you have in your experience bar. So I got a newfound appreciation for it. In this run I die too much, so I can't really feel the bar at all, so it just kind of falls down the bracket. The game's also got its own version of the BFG, but that's towards the end and I ain't spoiling that. All the weapons are great honestly, except the old blade, which falls out the viable weapon bracket as soon as you get the hammer, and probably the golden spear, which gives you more essence per kill, which isn't really that viable unless you want to max your character out, in which, good luck. I especially like the skull crusher, which on my first playthrough I completely missed out on just because the placement is like straight after a boss, so I just walked past it. That's as far as I'm going to go out with the weapons. They're really good. I'm also going to rattle off some of the enemies that stood out for me that aren't bosses. And to quickly mention bosses quick, there's only 2 of them in the game, really 3, technically 4. The second boss I would have gone back to the drawing board for, but they can keep the dong knocker though. The Berserker's fun to fight, mostly fought one-on-one. His moves are erratic and wild. Once you get the timing down, he's still pretty hard to deal with. He's got tracking on his swings, which is a problem in most melee-focused games, so it's more of a case of finding opportunities to get in close. You've also got the Lepers, which I wouldn't pick fights with in real life, but in this is fine. They're weak in their lunge attack, this turns them into human baseballs to get a home run on. I only wish there were more ambushes with them in the game. And lastly, the Lightning and Firestorm Priests that I only mentioned because they're complete bullshit, and it feels like it's done on purpose. You don't really fight them that much. They're mostly memorable because they're shielded and they're frustrating. You can also kill them in the most embarrassing way, so that evens out. All the other enemies are pretty standard in what to expect. The later half of the game kind of upgrades each one to make them suit your bigger arsenal of weapons. You're not killing stuff, you're exploring ELDERBORN's world, finding secrets to get EXP to level up, a system I've got mixed feelings about, but I'll get into that later. But as I'm talking about it, might is the stat to go for, get rip and tear. Any situation where you hit a dude with another dude is always a good time. Boys. The others I can take or leave. It's not that they're not useful, they are. It's just sad to see what could be a neat skill idea settled with increase or pickup distance, or health regeneration. It invites you to experiment with it, but personally I found resilience the least useful, even on harder difficulties because most of the stuff one-shots you anyway, and also I'm bad at the game. I feel like the stigma of the Unity engine is being washed off in 2020, but I'm prepared to eat my words on that. The game looks and plays great. I only had one crash and it was my fault due to not paying my electric bill. The environments are great for what they have to work with. I only want to see more of the world they're making. It only gets more interesting towards the end, but whether Hyperstrange continue with Elderborn or move on to new ideas, they've got a really solid foundation to work on. The sound of music is great. They've got this cute marking tagged it of being metal AF. It's really fitting and nails what they were going for. The sounds are really clangy and meaty. You even got that little mew slow motion noise that triggers after you parry, so you know when to ruin someone's day. It all comes together having that bloody ballet feeling that Doom 2016 has. Oh shit, Doom's out Friday, isn't it? I think that covers everything I wanted to talk about. If I may suggest small improvements, I think there needs to be a permadeath option when starting a new game, just so it saves time when you're doing a no death or purge run. Speaking of which, one thing I noticed that there wasn't enough scorpions in the game to get mastery of them during a purge run, unless I missed a few. But I only found about 14 to 16 and you need 20 required. So normally I wouldn't suggest this, but add more scorpions. It's just weird not being to 100% a game in one file is all. I might stream some runs in future, I don't know. Also, if you're familiar with this game's marketing, you know I'm ignoring that it calls itself a Souls-like, which I don't think it needs to compare itself to. I think it's got enough variety to distinguish itself from that genre. I also feel like it hinders it a bit. That and I only consider a game to be a Souls-like if it temporarily cures my crippling depression, which only a few things have done so far, so what was I saying? Oh, I feel like the corpse retrieval stuff isn't needed for such a sort of game, especially with difficulty settings where you can't exactly farm experience efficiently without it feeling like a chore. I mentioned mixed feelings about the level up system and this is why. I like this game enough for multiple playthroughs with different builds and different difficulties, but there isn't enough of the game to get a character to max out, which is a shame because I can't be the rage-induced air-dashing waffle stomper I could be. But despite that, I can really highly recommend this game. It's cheap and the folks at Hyperstrain deserve encouragement for future projects, so go buy it. Okay, that's the video. It's my first kind of lengthy review of a game. Yeah, cheers for watching. Whether you liked it or hate it, just let me know. I've got other games I want to talk about, so okay, love you, bye.